The final score will say Falcons 27, Rams 24, but that number barely captures how chaotic, fragile, and revealing this game really was. This wasn't just a dramatic Monday night finish, it was a stress test for two teams moving in very different emotional directions, and it exposed truths that will matter far beyond Week 17. Atlanta walked into the night with a losing record and no playoff control, yet they played the first half like a team that had rehearsed this exact script. Los Angeles, meanwhile, looked like a contender still haunted by its previous collapse, unsure whether to attack or simply survive. That contrast defined the entire game. At halftime, the scoreboard told a story that felt definitive, 21-0 Falcons. But the way Atlanta built that lead mattered more than the number itself. This wasn't a fluky advantage created by busted coverages or lucky bounces. It was built on physical dominance, discipline, and one player who completely warped the geometry of the field. Bijan Robinson didn't just have a big game, he dictated terms. His 93-yard touchdown run was not merely explosive, it was demoralizing. Plays like that don't just add points, they strip belief from the other sideline. The Rams had angles, they had speed. None of it mattered. Robinson saw daylight, trusted his blocking, and once he reached the second level, the play was over. That run symbolized Atlanta's entire first half, decisive, aggressive, and fearless. And yet, this game ultimately wasn't about Atlanta's hot start. It was about how close they came to wasting it. The Rams opened the night looking exactly like a team still emotionally hungover from blowing a 16-point fourth-quarter lead against Seattle less than 2 weeks earlier. There was hesitation in their execution, sloppiness up front, and most uncharacteristically, mistakes from Matthew Stafford. Stafford entered the night having thrown just 5 interceptions all season. He threw 3 in this game alone, and one of them immediately turned into 7 points the other way. Jesse Bates's pick six wasn't just another interception on the stat sheet. It was a momentum accelerant. Stafford has built a Hall of Fame caliber career on trusting tight windows, but when that trust slips even slightly, the consequences are brutal. That interception tied him with Brett Favre for the most pick sixes in NFL history, a staggering stat that underscores both his longevity and his risk tolerance. On this night, that risk came due. Still, what makes the Rams dangerous is that they don't panic, and eventually they woke up. The second half became a completely different game. Los Angeles rattled off 21 straight points, not through dominance, but through pressure, chaos, and opportunism. Jared Verse's blocked field goal, returned for a touchdown, was the pivot point. That single play flipped momentum harder than any offensive drive could. Instead of Atlanta extending the lead to 3 scores, the Rams were suddenly alive, energized, and believing again. That's the fine line in the NFL. One special teams lapse can undo 40 minutes of solid football. From that point on, the Falcons were no longer dictating. They were reacting. And this is where the game exposed Atlanta's fragility. Even with a dominant running performance and a defense that forced turnovers, they struggled to close. Kirk Cousins was efficient but limited. Atlanta couldn't consistently move the ball late, and the Rams' defense started winning downs that mattered. When Puka Nacua tied the game at 24-24 with under 3 minutes left, the momentum felt irreversible. SoFi Stadium was loud, the Rams had all the emotional leverage, and Atlanta looked like a team bracing for another late collapse to add to a season full of them. What happened next is the most important part of the story. Atlanta didn't fold, they didn't try to be clever, they didn't chase a knockout punch. They ran the ball, protected the football, and trusted their kicker, the same kicker who had already suffered a nightmare moment earlier in the game. Zane Gonzalez lining up for a 51-yard attempt with 21 seconds left was not a comfortable situation. It was a test of nerve as much as leg strength. He passed it. That kick was more than a game winner. It was redemption. It was composure. It was the Falcons refusing to let the night become another almost in a season full of them. But the ending was messy. And it matters. The Rams had chances, real ones. Stafford missed a wide-open Xavier Smith. Officials swallowed the whistle on what appeared to be clear pass interference against D. Alford on Tutu Atwell, a non-call that would have set up a chip-shot field goal. And then Puka Nacua nearly pulled off something miraculous with a one-handed grab that would have put Los Angeles right back in range. Any one of those plays changes the outcome. Instead, all three failed. That's football. And that's also why this loss cuts so deeply for the Rams. This was their second straight gut punch, following the collapse against Seattle that already cost them the NFC West and a shot at the #1 seed. Suddenly, a team that once controlled its destiny is now fighting for seeding math and scoreboard help. For Matthew Stafford, the timing couldn't be worse. MVP races are as much about narrative as numbers, and 3 interceptions on a national stage, especially after playing nearly mistake-free football all season, will linger. One bad game doesn't erase months of excellence, but when the margin between candidates is razor thin, nights like this become reference points. For Atlanta, the win doesn't magically fix everything. They're still 7-9, they're still inconsistent, but emotionally this game matters. Winning after blowing a 21-0 lead is different than losing after building one. It teaches a team that they can survive chaos, not just create it. There's also a broader ripple effect. Carolina, watching from afar, benefits enormously. A Falcons win next week clinches the NFC South for the Panthers, regardless of what Tampa Bay does. Atlanta, unintentionally, has become a kingmaker in a division race they no longer control. That's the strange beauty of late-season football. Even teams with losing records can bend the postseason landscape. For the Rams, the lesson is harsher. They are still dangerous. They can still make noise in January. But the past 2 weeks have exposed a vulnerability. When games tilt into disorder, they don't always regain control. Turnovers, penalties, and special teams lapses have crept in at the worst possible time. For the Falcons, the takeaway is simpler but no less important. When Bijan Robinson is the engine, everything else works better. His presence stabilizes the offense, shortens games, and keeps defenses honest. If Atlanta wants any momentum heading into the final week, it runs through him, literally. This game wasn't clean. It wasn't perfectly officiated. It wasn't elegant, but it was honest. It showed how quickly dominance can evaporate, how thin the line is between collapse and composure, and how one kick after everything that came before can still decide a night. Atlanta survived. Los Angeles endured another scar. And Monday Night Football once again reminded everyone why no lead, no narrative, and no expectation is ever truly safe. The final score will say Falcons 27, Rams 24, but that number barely captures how chaotic, fragile, and revealing this game really was. This wasn't just a dramatic Monday night finish. It was a stress test for two teams moving in very different emotional directions, and it exposed truths that will matter far beyond Week 17. Atlanta walked into the night with a losing record and no playoff control, yet they played the first half like a team that had rehearsed this exact script. Los Angeles, meanwhile, looked like a contender still haunted by its previous collapse, unsure whether to attack or simply